We're brought to you by Empire Sports Media, so make sure you check them out on their website for all your New York sports content. Yankees, Jets, Giants, you name it, it's on their Empire Sports Media, and we've been doing some of their Mets content, so we want to thank them for sponsoring us for this video. Another week of New York Metropolitan Baseball has wrapped up, which means it's time for another New York Mets weekly recap. I'm Frank from Frank About Sports. Welcome to Mets Weekly.
Two, Vader swings and misses, strike three. He struck him out. 5 Met pitchers combined for the second no-hitter in New York Mets history.
All in all, it was a pretty good week for the Mets. It definitely ended on a sour note. And our main topic that we're going to go over is who can Buck trust? Because I think that was a really big key in the Sunday game and on the Friday game, where you see the bullpen not quite able to get the job done, and you have these relievers that are available, but Buck doesn't want to use them in big spots. But that's not all we're going to go over, because in these weekly recaps, we go over the good, the bad, and everything in between. So we will start off with the good, because the week did begin on a positive note with the New York Mets winning the series against the Angels. That final game, the Sunday night game, Taijuan Walker was on the mound, and it definitely did not look like they were off to a good start in that very first inning. Walker was getting hit pretty hard, gave up a run. Mets are down 1-0, and you're like, oh boy, here we go. Mets are going to lose the series. Taijuan Walker's going to have a bad start, but that wasn't the case. He actually was tipping his pitches in the first inning, and in the dugout after the inning, the Mets were able to correct it, get Taijuan Walker on track, and he ended up pitching one of his better starts of the season, going 6 innings, striking out 10 batters. The shadows probably helped him out quite a bit, but still, getting a nice start against the Angels was really big for this team. Seth Lugo followed it up with a good outing, and Edwin Diaz was probably his best outing of the year, going an inning and 2/3 and going right through the heart of that Angels lineup, striking out guys like Mike Trout. Was really impressive to see. The Mets got big hits from J.D. Davis and P. Alonso in this game that really helped them cap off that win and be able to win that series against the Angels. They got a much-needed day off after that. After being on the West Coast for so long, they headed back home to start a series with the Milwaukee Brewers, winning the first game 4-0. And this was a massive start for Chris Bassett, who had been struggling recently, particularly his starts in the West Coast. But against the Milwaukee Brewers, he went 8 scoreless innings, only giving up 3 hits. He struck out 7 batters, and he threw 109 pitches. So Buck really pushed him. He wanted to rest up his bullpen quite a bit, because even though they had the off day on Monday, you had Seth Lugo and Edwin Diaz pitch more than 1 inning. So you really want to get those guys fully rested going into the rest of this series against the Brewers and the following series against the Marlins. And Drew Smith capped it off with a really nice 9th inning. As far as the hitting, you had a nice game from Brandon Nimmo. You had some help from Jeff McNeil, Eduardo Escobar getting involved, P. Alonso with another good game. So P. Alonso continuing that MVP caliber year. And it's definitely good to see that he was healthy. And in last week's recap, I said I still was a little concerned because he was popping up a lot of pitches in the Angels series. I didn't know if the hand was bothering him too much, but I think watching him this week, P. Alonso is still looking really, really good. And that's big for the Mets because he's such a massive part of this team. You need to have him in there and have him healthy. But then the following night, we get into the bad as David Peterson was on the mound, and he had a really rough start, only going the 4 innings, giving up 6 hits, 4 runs, a couple of walks. Jake Reed followed him up because David Pearson only went 4 innings. Needed someone to kind of bridge the gap. You weren't going to go to your high leverage guys in the 5th inning. So Jake Reed comes in and he struggled even more, giving up 5 runs. He was walking batters, hitting batters with pitches. I mean, this was his first outing in quite a while. And after this, he got DFA'd because the outing was just so poor. And then Trevor Williams came in. At first, he got off to a rocky start, but he was able to settle down, give the Mets 2 1/3 inning, which was really big. And then Adam Ottavino came in, which I'm not crazy about coming into a game down by so much, but he did. And then Joely Rodriguez pitched a scoreless 9th inning. And for the hitting, the Mets did not have too much going on, especially because they were facing Corbin Burnes. Corbin Burnes is one of the best pitchers in all of the National League. He hit Starling Marte with a pitch, but definitely was very alarming because Marte was just coming back from a quad injury. And the Brewers were up 10-1. So that definitely had you really concerned. You don't want to lose Marte again because he is also a big part of this team. And for the Mets in that game, there was far too many strikeouts, which is something the Mets have done such a great job of this year, not striking out that much. working counts, putting the ball in play, making the defense make plays, even if they're getting a lot of cheap hits, infield hits. They lead the league in that, drawing their walks, little things like that. But they were able to bounce back in that last game of the series, winning 5-4. Tyler McGill was on the mound. He went to 3 1/3 innings before getting injured. So we finally got Tyler McGill back. He made a start against the Angels. This was his second start back, and he came out right in the middle of the game after a pitch. Felt something in his shoulder. It is a shoulder strain for Tyler McGill. He has been shut down from throwing for 4 weeks, and they will reevaluate him after that, which means he will be out longer than 4 weeks because he's going to have to get used to throwing again, get built back up, make a rehab start or two, probably throw some bullpen sessions, maybe a simulated game, all the things that go into a pitcher rehabbing. So it's going to be another period of time that we do not see Tyler McGill. But the good news is that Max Scherzer has really been working really well. He's coming along. He might throw a rehab assignment on Tuesday, and he could be back pitching for the Mets as early as next Sunday. Could be after that, but that's the earliest Max Scherzer could return. He is progressing really well. We've even seen Jacob deGrom throwing some bullpen sessions. He's getting some work in at Citi Field. So seeing those two big-time pitchers getting closer to being healthy, getting ready to come back, that would be a really big boost for the Mets. Said you could avoid these poor starts from David Peterson and guys like that and just have your bullpen be more rested because you don't have to use your relievers quite as much. And then you won't have situations like you did against the Marlins where, you saw some good outings. And Friday, for the most part, it seemed like a good game where the Mets were up 10-1. But a really big thing happened late in the game when Adonis Medina comes in. The Mets are, like I said, they're up 10-1. And Medina really started struggling. He could not find the strike zone. He's walking batteries. He's giving up hits. And the Marlins were getting close to making it a very competitive game. So Buck Showalter had to pull him. And he had to go to Adam Ottavino for inning and a third in a game where they were up 10-1 in the 8th inning. That is something you really, really want to avoid because you wish you could have maybe had Adam Ottavino for Saturday, or more importantly, maybe have Adam Ottavino for Sunday. So it seemed like a good win, because Pete Alonso hit a home run, Francisco Lindor had a big home run. You see the offense performing really well. You beat up a good pitcher in Pablo Lopez. Having to get that many pitches out of Ottavino late in the game when you're up by so much, that really was something you did not want to happen. But on Saturday, the Mets did get a good performance from Taijuan Walker. He went 6 2/3 innings, only giving up 2 hits, a walk, 9 strikeouts, 97 pitches. He was almost able to get through 7, but he started to run out of gas. He was giving up fly balls. Too many Marlins were reaching base, and because the Mets had only scored 3 runs, the game was too close to really chance anymore. So Buck Showalter went to Drew Smith, and he had a big outing, going inning and a third scoreless, striking out 3 batters. Edwin Diaz closed the door in the 9th inning. It definitely was pretty intense because he gave up a couple hits and the Marlins scored a run. Even though it was weak contact, there were still runners on base. So when it comes to baseball, anything could happen. Even if it's weak contact, even if it's unlucky, anything could happen, especially with the Marlins because they're tricky like that. And for the offense, this was another big game for Francisco Lindor as he had another home run. Jeff McNeil drove in a run, so it felt like the Mets were off to a really good start in this Marlins series, winning the first 2. But then Sunday's game happened, and you knew it was going to be a really tough matchup going up against Sandy Alcantara, who's been such an amazing pitcher this year, and he goes deep into games every single time out there. He's a really tough pitcher to beat, and he was dealing for the Marlins. It looked like it was going to be a miracle before the Mets could get a run. They finally did late in the game after a Starling Marte triple and a Francisco Lindor RBI single. So the Mets had a 1-0 lead. And Chris Bassett, he had a good start, but he threw a lot of pitches. He was into the 7th inning. He was nearing 100 pitches. And then once he started walking batters and he loaded up the bases in the 7th inning with 1 out at 109 pitches. And some of the pitches in his last at-bat weren't even close. So you could tell Bassett was running out of gas and losing some of his effectiveness. And again, with the game being so close to him on Saturday, Buck Showalter is like, I can't chance it. I have to go to somebody else. And the next guy up was Seth Lugo. And the problem is that Seth Lugo honestly did not have it in this game. His fastball, he was only getting it to 93 miles an hour. He maybe had 1 at 94 compared to the 96, 97. He could not get his curveball over at all. He kept missing up. And I think that the first pitch against the rookie Encarnacion, missing that curveball up, I thought that was the killer. If he could have got ahead with strike 1 with that curveball, I think that would have made a big difference. You're facing a rookie, a guy who's never seen Seth Lugo's curveball before. I thought that was going to be his best asset in that at-bat, but since he didn't have his curveball at all, he had no choice but to use the fastball. He goes on the outside corner, think it's a safe pitch in a 3-2 count after he just gotten a called strike on that pitch. Encarnacion was able to go with that pitch, hit his first career home run, and of course, it was a big grand slam to put the Marlins ahead. Certified Met killer John Birdie made it 5-1. An error from Eduardo Escobar later on gave the Marlins their 6th run. Jazz Chisholm was getting on base and making things happen. And then for the Mets offense, I mean, later on, Jeff McNeil got a double. Guillorme drove him in, but other than that, they weren't able to do much. We saw quite a bit of strikeouts again. Charlie Marte striking out twice. Nick Plummer going 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. Nick Plummer is in a big 0 for streak. And that brings me to one of the topics I wrote down of what I want to discuss today is that with Nick Plummer struggling, he's in almost an 0 for 20 stretch. He struck out, like I said, all 3 times today. He's getting very inconsistent playing time, and he was DHing today. And you just have to wonder with how well Mark Vientos has been playing in AAA right now. I think it's getting closer and closer to we probably need to call up Mark Vientos and see what we have, because it just looks like Nick Plummer doesn't have it right now. And it's a shame because Plummer got off to such a great start, having that home run against the Philadelphia Phillies, then following it up with another good start, getting a few hits and going to the opposite field for a home run. Ever since then, he has not been able to do much at the plate, and you feel like you got to give somebody else a chance. And Eduardo Escobar is in a big 0 for as well. He's a streaky hitter. He has his good stretches like he did out west, but then he has stretches like this where he goes 0 for 20. And Mark Vientos, again, he might be a solution for that because he can play some third base. He doesn't play it particularly that great. I just feel like the Mets have to at least consider trying something else, especially if they are going to have these occasional struggles on offense. You would like another power bat in there, another home run threat in the lineup. And to talk about the bench even more, one of the other things that's been interesting to me is how many starts Tomas Nido has gotten recently. And I think that shows you that Buck is also losing faith in Patrick Mazeika. So we're talking about who could Buck trust, and we're talking about the relievers. I think the same can go for the catching position because Tomas Nido has been playing, 3 days in a row, a couple of times in the past week, and he just feels like he wants to avoid Patrick Mazeika because Mazeika is doing nothing at the plate offensively, and he is not nearly as good defensively as Tomas Nido is. And then with Buck being able to trust somebody in the bullpen, it was obvious that Seth Lugo didn't have it, but Buck Showalter was in a scenario where what else is he going to do? He couldn't go to Drew Smith because Drew Smith had just thrown more than an inning on Saturday. He couldn't go to Adam Ottavino because he threw more than an inning on Friday. Like I said, Donis Medina not coming through. I thought that was a big deal for Sunday's game. And then you work and go to Yohan Lopez because you have no faith in him. He doesn't have faith in Chasen Shreve or Joely Rodriguez. Trevor Williams has now moved into the rotation because of the injury to Tylor McGill. You're not going to go to Edwin Diaz in the 7th inning. So the only guy he had left was Tommy Hunter, who was yet to make an appearance this season for the Mets. So to bring Tommy Hunter in for his first appearance of the year with the bases loaded and 1 out, that would have been a really hard scenario for him to make his debut. So Seth Lugo was the guy that he had the most faith in. Obviously, Lugo didn't get the job done, but it just shows that this is a weakness of the Mets right now. They need some more high leverage guys that they could trust because Adam Ottavino and Drew Smith and even Edwin Diaz, they're not going to be available every day. So there have to be some other pitchers that step up. The hope is that when Trevor May comes back, he could be one of those guys. But for the time in between, and just in case there are any other injuries, you definitely need some more relievers you could trust. Guys that you trust more than Yohan Lopez or more than Joely Rodriguez. The Mets have definitely got to be active on that trade front and get some more guys in here. But the good news is that Tommy Hunter did come in after Seth Lugo had that unfortunate 7th inning. And Tommy Hunter went an inning and 2/3. He did give up an unearned run due to Eduardo Escobar's error. But then Joely Rodriguez came in. He gave up a hit, but he got the last out of the 9th inning. So it was good to see that Tommy Hunter did have a successful outing going more than an inning. That's something that Buck Showalter likes to do. So we'll see if Tommy Hunter could kind of work his way into somebody that Buck could trust. He still has a long way to go because it was only 1 outing. And then as far as some of my other takeaways from throughout the week, I think that Francisco Lindor having a big weekend was a really encouraging sign. He's another guy that last week I was a little concerned about. He didn't look quite himself after fracturing his finger from that whole door situation in Los Angeles, but hitting the big home run on Friday and the big home run on Saturday, and these weren't any cheapies. He was hitting absolute bombs out there, one left-handed, one right-handed. He had a big hit against Alcantara in the Sunday game, so it's good to see that Francisco Lindor might be heating up again. One of the other things that was pretty interesting is that the Marlins were stealing a ton of bases in these first 3 games, and teams had 15 straight consecutive successful stolen bases against the Mets until the strike him out, throw him out, where Tomas Nido was able to throw out Jazz Chisholm from his knees. So that was a really good play by Nido, but prior to that, the Marlins have been running wild on him and just the whole Mets team in general. And then one last takeaway I have that was noted in the broadcast was that in this series so far, Brandon Nimmo has had 7 groundouts to the right side, and his ground ball rate is now above 50%. It's even higher threat than somebody like Starling Marte, who was brought in knowing that he hits a lot of ground balls. So I'm glad that Brenham at least went the other way in his last at-bat. He had a line drive to left field. It was out, but at least he was making a concerted effort to go the other way and not rolling over and trying to pull the ball too much. But the good news is that the Mets do have one more chance to win this series against the Miami Marlins. On Monday, it's a day game. David Pearson, he'll get another opportunity. The Mets are going to need a much better start from him this time compared to his last start. And they're going to be going up against Rogers, who's had a rough year this year. Obviously, he was an all-star last year. We know the Mets tend to struggle against lefties sometimes. So it's going to be a really interesting game. Hopefully, the Mets could win this series. You don't want to split with the Marlins because you face so many tough teams. And speaking of that, your very next series is going to be in Houston against the Houston Astros, who are also a really good team. So you got to take advantage of the Marlins when you play them. You got to beat these teams that are under 500 because after that, the Mets are going to wrap it up with another weekend series against the Marlins, but that time in Miami. So once that series against Miami is concluded, I'll be back to recap all those games. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Until the next one, be safe, be smart, be healthy, and let's go Mets.